Good afternoon, everybody. I make it 5 o'clock, so we shall begin the meeting of the Cabinet this Wednesday, the 6th of March. Apologies for absence. I have Councillor Jaspir Anand and Councillor Shaw is joining us online. The Head of Paid Service, the Chief Executive, Tony Clements, is not with us today, so we are joined instead by Kerry Stevens, the Strategic Director for Adults and Public Health, sitting in what we call the hot seat. So, Kerry, you're very, very welcome. Good to have you here. For the first time in this capacity, but welcome. Urgent matters, I don't believe there are any. Matters to be considered in private. As always, there are gold papers, confidential appendices to a number of the reports this evening. If members wish to refer to any of those confidential appendices, please indicate to me before doing so. In order to discuss any of the information containing the gold papers, we will need to clear the gallery and close the meeting to the public. So, of course, as you always hear me say, I'd rather you didn't. So if you can avoid doing that, that would be wonderful. But of course, if you do feel you need to, indicate to me in advance. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Blacker.
Yeah, just in relation to item 10, Chair, draw members' attention to my declarations of interest, as I have done previously.
Thank you very much. Minutes of the previous meeting as tabled. Are they agreed? Thank you very much. Appointments to subcommittees and outside bodies. There are none. So we go to Adults and Children's Domiciliary Care and Adult Day Opportunities Dynamic Purchasing System Procurement. Councillor Blacker.
Thank you, Chair. This is a renewal of the dynamic purchasing system and extension of it to Adult Day Opportunities to give us greater contractual and quality assurance control over those when we purchase them.
Great. Okay. Any questions or comments from members of the Cabinet? I didn't have any requests to speak on this item. Okay. On that basis, then, I sort of ask Cabinet to review the recommendations of the report and ask that they're agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to the Ealing Serious Violence Strategy. In the absence of Councillor Anand, owing to new duties on local authorities, the council is required to come up with a serious violence strategy. But of course, the serious violence strategy also speaks to the work the council does in regards to our Safer Communities activity. And so this report sets out a series of strategic objectives, not just for the council, but also our expectations of partners, but very importantly, some of the successes that we've been able to achieve in this area, not just in dealing with, of course, low-level antisocial behaviour, but in more fundamental and important issues in respect of things like reducing access to weapons, tackling violence against women and girls, and diverting young people and others from violence. And I believe that there is a question from Councillor Gallant.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've actually got two questions here, if I may. On page 52, in this reference 2.4 paragraph. Now, I appreciate this is subject to wider legislation, so forgive me if I've missed something here, but can I ask why educational institutions, prisons and youth custodial institutions are not included as duty holders? And are we not missing a vital opportunity to link intelligence and prevent serious violence? And the other, what I wanted to also ask, page 68, this alarming, in the report itself, this alarming sentence that Ealing has the highest rate of alcohol-related hospital admissions of any London borough. Just to ask the obvious, and it really is an obvious question, is alcohol therefore a major driver of serious violence? Does its misuse link up with other substance abuse in other groups? Are there links there? And perhaps do we need to take a closer look at our licensing schemes?
I sort of find myself in that situation of sort of having to point out to Councillor Gallant that much of the answers to both of his questions stem from the legislation that his government have put into place. So in respect to the first question, there isn't a statutory duty because of primary legislation. However, of course, the council works in close partnership and cooperation with all of the preventative and the policing authorities in respect to those areas. So we have very strong relationships with them in respect of not just the prevention of violence duty, but also in respect to all of the other areas that we work on, things like safeguarding, for example, and public order and protection. So whilst the duty might not be there because of primary legislation, the work, of course, continues. Councillor Backer, it might be worth bringing you here on issues in respect of public health and the impact of violence on crime. I suspect I know what the answer will be.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We do have a substance misuse strategy anyway. So I think Councillor Gallant has probably missed that at Health and Wellbeing Board. I know the Conservatives are no longer represented on it following the last local elections, but we do take a holistic approach, obviously, to public health through the building blocks of health. You know, the new Ealing Together Health and Wellbeing strategy includes that holistic view, and obviously it is a major driver of antisocial behaviour and things, which is what the paper before us is trying to address.
And the Chancellor's literally just announced a freeze in alcohol duty. So if Councillor Gallant, you're making an argument that access to cheap booze drives violence, which it does, and all science points to that, your Chancellor has just made alcohol that bit more accessible. Now, most people drink alcohol very sensibly, in moderation, and I'm sure to some extent that duty will be helpful in the cost of living crisis for those who like to dabble in a pint or two or a bottle of wine. But what it doesn't help with, and what the government has consistently failed in doing, is helping us tackle high strength, low value alcohol, which is of course the thing that is consumed by people who unfortunately have alcohol dependency issues and invariably end up finding themselves involved in low level and in some cases quite serious crime. So maybe that's one to think about, as well as our very restrictive licensing laws. On that basis, okay, so unless there's anything else, I ask that Cabinet review the recommendations in the report and ask that they're agreed. We then move to the Green Ealing Business Plan. Councillor Costigan. Sorry, there's a question. I was mistaking myself. Councillor Costigan.
Thank you, Chair. This is the annual report that sets out the plans for the year and the priorities for Greener Ealing Limited, which is the Council's wholly owned environmental services subsidiary. And the report this year sets out the performance to date, which I have to say is really brilliant, and it does show the worth of us bringing the service back in-house, because the comparison to the previous service, which was provided by an external contractor, it's really like night and day. So, you know, the number one thing to understand from this report is that Greener Ealing is doing a great job on keeping our streets clean, on picking up rubbish, and on helping us to recycle. Indeed, we are officially, government figures found just recently that we're the second best borough in London when it comes to our recycling figures. So we're doing really well for that. The report also outlines the efficiency of the service. There is a number of charts that show that we're one of the most efficient services in London. So I think that's great news for local residents to see that their council tax is being spent in a way that is value for money and is also producing a really positive service. A couple of things just to note in this year's report. The first is that we took the graffiti service back in-house last year. So that is now integrated into the Greener Ealing family. And we, of course, have plans to take the parking service back in-house and to become part of Greener Ealing from April of this year. That is, I think, going to be really positive news for local residents, because we'll be able to focus our parking enforcement on the areas of the borough and the contraventions that residents are most concerned about. We will be able to operate for a longer portion of the day, and we will have additional enforcement officers. And I think all of that is exactly what residents would like to see. So I hope that colleagues can agree the report tonight, and perhaps thank all of our operatives, our staff in Greener Ealing, who do what's often quite a difficult job, picking up bins and cleaning the street, but it's a very important job that our residents and I think we as Cabinet members really appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Costigan. Councillor Malcolm hopefully has a question. Why don't you use Councillor Gallant's? There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, it relates to paragraph 3.3, which I think Councillor Costigan, you just mentioned with regard to the parking enforcement. So from April, and once that contract starts going, what are the plans that you have for GEL and yourself to report the performance data for that to councillors and residents? And secondly, with regard to the leaf clearance issues that we've been seeing around the borough, where lots of bags have just been left for many weeks, blocking the streets and the pavements. There's no reference, it seems, in this report to that. I wonder why that is, please.
I mean, give it a go and then I'll come in.
Thank you, Councillor Malcolm. So with regards to the parking enforcement contract, once that moves over from April, we will continue to monitor, just like we've always monitored our performance in parking. So I know that there's a regular parking report that goes to the Overview and Scrutiny Commission. So we will continue to do that. And also we have regular reports from Greener Ealing, of which this is just one, where we update on the performance. So we will continue to get that data for our parking service in the way that we are doing currently. Of course, we will have, I think, greater oversight of parking because it is actually fully controlled by the council rather than an external contractor where we're reliant on them to provide the data to us. And it's more of a it's further away from us. It's not as easy to actually understand fully what's going on. We will have control of the levers. So if we see performance in an area that might not be up to scratch, we're able to much more quickly make a difference on the ground and ensure that that performance is back up at the level that we would expect. Your further question about leaf clearance, we have been expending a lot of resource on cleaning up the leaves on our streets, and a lot of our staff have been out cleaning it up over the autumn and some of the winter months. Because we've focused primarily on clearing the streets as quickly as we can, it means that we have deployed more people onto that and less operatives onto picking up the green sacks afterwards. So we do acknowledge that that means that there have been some green sacks left around a little bit longer than we would like. But we did take a decision to prioritise getting the leaves off the streets as our number one priority. However, now we are going to kind of tweak that resource allocation and put more staff on collecting the green sacks. So we should hopefully balance that out a little bit better. But I think the key thing was responding to residents who really wanted the leaves off the streets first and foremost.
And my only observation further to yours, Councillor Costigan, would be, of course, that the Liberal Democrats yesterday at the full council meeting moved a budget amendment which would have seen us apparently use less agency workers. And just as you said yesterday, Councillor Costigan, our GEL contractors is one of the areas that we have to have, unfortunately, agency contractors, not least because we have low levels of higher levels of vacancy, because just like most of the rest of the country, there's a very, very high vacancy rate at the moment because the labour market, unfortunately, is broken. And of course, if Councillor Malcolm would have his way, we'd have even less staff. So, it's that joined up thinking, Councillor Malcolm, that if you put forward a budget amendment at a full council meeting that is going to disable the council from being able to do what it even currently does at the moment, and then the very next day come to a cabinet meeting pointing out the challenges that are inherent with having vacancies in the workforce, it's not very consistent. So it just might be worth having a think about that in future. Any more for any more? Fine. In that case, I ask that Cabinet review the recommendations in the report and ask that they're agreed. And then moving on to the final item, last but by no means least, and some wonderful news after a significant period of time negotiating away, the update on the future of Warren Farm Sports Ground. I'll go to you first, Councillor Costigan, but I know that Councillor Newsdub will want to come in too.
Thank you, Chair. So I've been a cabinet member for 3 years, and I think that this report, Chair, is probably the one that it gives me most pleasure to bring forward tonight, because it has been, the last couple of years we have spent a lot of time and effort, and I know yourself in particular, Chair, on making sure we get the best outcome possible for Warren Farm, and we achieve what we've always wanted to achieve, which is a rewilded, high-quality nature reserve that can be enjoyed by the people of our borough alongside playing pitches that young people can enjoy for generations to come. And people will recall at the Cabinet meeting last year, we brought that vision forward with a plan to declare the majority of the Warren Farm playing field site a nature reserve. And we were able to do that because Imperial College and Imperial College NHS Trust, who own the field beside Warren Farm, agreed that we could use their land on a lease for part of the rewilded nature reserve. That plan meant that some of the site some of the Warren Farm site would be used for the playing fields. However, we have spent the last 12 months in further negotiation with Imperial College and Imperial College NHS Trust. And the end of that period of negotiation has meant that they have now agreed that they will undertake a property transaction with us. That means that we can put the playing fields on their field, which means that we are in the really great position that we are able to say tonight that we will be rewilding the entirety of the green space at Warren Farm. I think this is excellent news for all of us who've worked so hard over the last number of months. And I see Katie Boyles and other campaigners in the audience here tonight. We've worked so hard over the last 12 months to try and achieve that vision of having a rewilded nature reserve and the sports facilities that young people want. So we will, as part of this report tonight, be declaring that entirety of the green space at Warren Farm a nature reserve. We are doing this as part of our commitment in our manifesto to rewild 800,000 square metres of the borough, and Warren Farm will make a big contribution to that. We will, once we have made, I hope, this decision tonight, Chair, we hope to work with local residents, stakeholders and campaigners to agree a management plan for the nature reserve. And we will submit that for approval so that we can then take forward what I hope will be amazing plans for Warren Farm, which will see it being a amazing nature reserve that I think we can be proud of, and that will get support across the borough and beyond. So I'll pass then on to, I think Councillor Newsdub wanted to come in as well.
Thank you so much, Councillor Costigan. Having only been a cabinet member for less than a year, I feel rather spoiled by having a week that was as exciting as last week was when we were able to announce this. There is nothing more important and joyful than sports and activity for our young people. And in my role, I go to a lot of the providers across the borough, and seeing the importance of that team sport and the importance of embedding sport and community and socialising into their communities is incredibly important. To be able to do this alongside all of our conservation ambitions is incredibly exciting, and Councillor Costigan has already paid credit to the campaigners who worked alongside us to deliver this. And I really, really look forward to that co-creation, co-design, co-management, where we go next in creating really important sports and community sports facilities, but ones that can really very, very happily and sustainably coexist with the nature needs that we have on the site. So yeah, that's all I have to say really. Yeah, it was a good week.
Thank you very much. We've got two questions. First from Councillor Gallant.
Thank you very much, Chair. Could I just refer to page 111, ref 3.11? It says Imperial will work with the council to facilitate sports facilities within the land currently held by Imperial, whilst also improving biodiversity on the site, which is currently used for equestrian use. Now, I'd understood it that it was going to be a sports ground and a nature reserve. Will there be is there another area for equestrian use? And forgive me if I got my geography wrong. The other question I had, which is a general point, I have made it before, is can a busy and noisy sports ground exist side by side with a tranquil nature reserve?
I mean, can a nature reserve sit next to a busy main road with aircraft flying overhead? I mean, I think there are mitigations that you put in place. Perhaps I'm stealing my colleague's thunder, but I think what we'll do, we'll go to Councillor Malcolm, and then we'll take all those questions together.
Thank you, Chair. We are very happy to see the reversal of the plans that we saw a year ago. I've got three questions for moving forwards. The first one, given when I've been on there, the many fire engine call-outs that are there, the antisocial behaviour, the asbestos presence in the buildings on the hard standing, what's the timescale for the removal of those buildings, given some of those issues that I've just mentioned in the question? And related to that, given that there is funding needed, that the council knows the value of and how to do that, will you give permission for a local group such as the Brent River and Canal Society, if they apply to funding, if the council is not able to do the work itself? Because there are more than one body you can do that, but Ealing Council needs to give permission for that. And then my third question is about the timing. Will you give the local nature reserve designation to Warren Farm before a partner is found for the sports provision of the Imperial College land? And what's the timescale you envisage on that?
Fair questions. Councillor Costigan, do you want to? I mean, it might be worth sort of covering off Councillor Malcolm's, and then there's maybe a point in here, Councillor Newstub, about alternative provision of activities in sort of the council's estate.
I'll try and answer as many of them as I can, although I wasn't 100% sure of Councillor Malcolm's second question. So funding for what?
Okay, so there's obviously funding needed to remove the asbestos and that elements of the building. There are two methods. One, the council can pay for it directly, but obviously that comes out the council coffers. The council can apply for external funding, or a body can do the external funding, but the council needs to give permission. So I guess I'm asking, would you be happy for a third party to do that? And if so, would you give permission if that was required?
Yep, thank you for clarifying that, Councillor Malcolm. So just in terms of that question, obviously we will look at working with local groups, and we will look at all options as to the best way to remove the current buildings on the hard standing. That will be, the next stage when we move on from tonight's decision, when we do more detailed planning in terms of the timeline for delivery of, what is, as I say, great news tonight. That leads on, I think, to your next question, which was also about timing and about when we would get nature reserve designation for the site. I don't think that there's necessarily a kind of a requirement that we would do one before or after the other. We're very happy to progress, to start now working with local people on putting together that management plan. It will take a bit of time. It's not something that we would expect would happen in a very short period of time, because we want to talk to as many people as possible about it and get the best plan that we can for Warren Farm Nature Reserve. But we're not thinking that there's any particular need to delay on it. We want to move ahead with it as fast as we can. And I think that we've said in the report that we're looking at doing that sooner rather than later. And we've already, I think, invited local residents to get involved with this in those discussions. I think the leader, the chair, has answered the question from Councillor Gallant in terms of having a nature reserve and having playing fields. We live in London, and there are nature reserves across London, which is great. It's brilliant we're able to have nature reserves in a city like London, but every single one of them is beside houses, is beside main roads, is beside a whole host of different facilities and amenities. I think really, in terms of opposition councillors, I really hope that they are going to be generous and positive about this decision, that they are going to see what an amazing result it is and what hard work went into achieving it by all parties involved, and not get caught up in very micro issues that aren't really pertinent to achieving the amazing vision that we're setting out here of what Warren Farm will hopefully become over this coming year and beyond. And I really hope that the opposition councillors will join us in celebrating this rather than picking on quite minor matters. Thank you.
Councillor Newstab, equestrian uses in the borough.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to have to look at that in the round. I don't think any decisions have been made there in relation to that. That particular one just references that the land is currently used for stabling of horses. It doesn't make any suggestions about what it might be used for in the future, or indeed where they might go. We're not currently the landlords of that land, and that will be discussions that we'll have and support them on that. I do think the key around the marketing piece and looking for a development partner, we're not even at that stage. So in terms of like who and how and the payments for replacing the buildings and getting rid of the existing hard standing are, as Councillor Costigan said, part of a much broader project that we need to initiate that deliver us both the nature reserve and those sports facilities. And we're very, very much at the beginning of that journey.
Thank you very much. Any other points or observations from Cabinet? I think if you'll forgive me for saying just a few words on this, given that one of the first acts as being the leader was to actually go to Warren Farm and meet with campaigners to have a conversation with them about the administration's long-term vision for Warren Farm. It was apparent to me at that stage that we needed to change direction, and that actually it wouldn't take too much by way of an engagement with Imperial College, and hopefully soon still the Earl of Jersey, to fundamentally set new boundaries and a new ambition to what we could achieve there. And it wasn't that long actually until we had agreement from Imperial to do what they had not done before, which was to throw their land into the mix. It enabled us at that point to be able to be very ambitious, not just in the ability of us to rewild part of Warren Farm and Imperial College's land, but to do something that's actually really important, which is to provide sports facilities for the young people of Southall and Hanwell, and to bring sports back to a place that so many generations of young people had experienced playing sport before. We equally said at that stage that it wasn't our ambition, unlike previous versions of the plan, to astroturf and level the entirety of Warren Farm. And we made those commitments at that stage on the basis of what we were able to achieve. But of course, our ambition at all stages, and I know from the conversations that we've had with campaigners along the way, our ambition has always been to try and deliver the best of both worlds. We are, of course, constrained in local government by the land that we have, the money that's available to us, and the limitations in terms of what we're able to do with our partners. But it's because of the hard work of our officers, and yes, the pressure too by campaigners who have been good faith actors along the way to help us achieve that outcome, an outcome that all of us wanted to get to. And it would be really easy for the doomsters and the naysayers and the sock puppets and the bad faith actors to try and present this as something other than it actually is, which is a fundamental win for our residents that can see us rewilding and designating a nature reserve alongside a facility fit for the 21st century. And I cannot tell you how excited I am to work with campaigners like Save Warren Farm, who are in the room here today, to really dream and imagine big about what that might look like. A modern, purpose-built, state-of-the-art, small pavilion with changing rooms, a small little cafe, and even some classrooms for nature next to a rewilded nature reserve. And I cannot wait to have conversations about how that can be laid out, about who we can work with, what money we can raise, what organizations want to be part of that new big vision, as well as making sure that, yes, we paint some white lines on some ground and get kids playing there once again. I really have to thank Imperial for going on that journey with us, and for being really good sports in coming up with a final deal that will enable us to achieve those things. And I hope, and if he's watching, if anybody's watching, if his people are watching, if the good people of Jersey are watching, I really hope that the Earl of Jersey would think too about perhaps us extending that nature reserve designation into his land too. That field at the bottom of Warren Farm that's got horses on it, that's got plants growing on it, but wouldn't it be amazing if we could put loads more trees there as well and we could extend that in? So like, I really hope that we can. And, you know, I said it last time that we discussed the Warren Farm report, like, I cannot wait for the moment when all of us can finally be on that place with, you know, the most biodiverse buildings, the most carbon sort of efficient facility. And maybe we can be celebrating it as the Chloe Kelly Sports Centre, and maybe even we'll be able to celebrate the opening of the Countess of Jersey Nature Reserve. But let's still dream, even if we might not be able to achieve it tomorrow. But hopefully with the report passed this evening, we can take the next step towards it. So with that, I ask that Cabinet review the recommendations in the report and that they're agreed. Thank you very much. So with that, it brings us to the end of the meeting. The date of the next meeting is scheduled to be Wednesday, the 17th of April, 2024. We'll see you then. Thank you.